So in America, where we live as Americans, we suffer from the illusion of inclusion. Whoa, 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 what does that look like? It looks like being a black American. The illusion that you are included in the oversight and the maintenance of outcomes is just a mere facade, as in America, where, quite frankly, it's irrelevant what you think about how services are being allocated in your community. The irrelevancy and then the awakening is happening as more and more black Americans who try to engage more and more black Americans are targeted as there's a target conversation saying that perhaps we need to oversee your podcast and say that your podcast will not be shown to everyone, even though you never really selected the option to age restriction. All of a sudden, your regular podcast that doesn't include any sexual favors or any nasty whatever, a few words of cursing maybe, but they put an age restriction on my videos. They didn't restrict the video, but I understand that they do restrict certain people's videos, as it's the free flow of freedom of information. It's the free flow of freedom, period. Because in America, we are free to fail. We are free to not thrive. We are free to not benefit. But we are restricted when it comes to being included in the process of oversight and the maintenance of effort for the outcomes of what we all are taxed on. And that would be the tax dollars, the American taxation system. As now we understand what we're really talking about. Perhaps we didn't understand initially, right? We didn't understand that America was about what I'm getting ready to say. America is about the harvest. And we didn't comment on the inability to share concerns, as we've always had a certain level of restrictions when it comes to engaging the public conversation, when it comes to the outcomes of the maintenance of public education and public services for you people. Because you people, well, come on, I think that because we do service immigrants in America, and we do, and those are the people who are non-citizens, but their rights to public education are real. And so they have the right to language development, they have the right to social services, integrating and participating. I mean, just the mere participation and the maintenance of effort. That means whatever happens with the investment for your people, you're allowed to share a concern. But when you live in a nation where your skin color has prohibited you from sharing in the maintenance of effort, and your skin color has entitled others emboldenedly to take advantage of the resources or your talent or your gift, because, monetarily, we're making money. We're making money every time someone can see something move. So my podcast is like a movement in the weeds, and somebody is watching the engagement, because my engagement was up a whole lot, but not enough to go, not enough like Yvette Carnell or, people. I mean, the process does work. You're not locked out. But you do have to have a level of, meaningful benefit to someone, because someone's going to make a whole lot of money based on advertisement. I mean, come on now. Newspapers used to be run by advertisers, and that way they could, sustain what services they're providing, right? And, when we're talking about sustainable options and sustainability, we're talking about the real reality to change the direction in which probably we were headed. So here we are, my people, and we're operating in the weeds, and in silos, different places. We can talk about the failed services, but then for the most part, the people who are dependent on the failed services have the inability to engage in the conversation. So it's just an illusion of inclusion when we're talking about, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Have we made it? This is America. Yes, we have made it. There are some of us living so large. I mean, champagne life is truly real, and it is good. It's wonderful. And when we make money and we are self-sustainable, well, we don't have to look around what's happening. I mean, we're doing it for ourselves, right? We're willing to stand up and pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. But for the people who are dependent on the system to operate in a manner in which it was intended, well, that is a dream, and it's not happening anymore. Your voice is just being drowned out initially from the onset of the initial services that would examine the maintenance of effort and how your people are benefiting from the system. The illusion to inclusion means that they are demonstrating and documenting that, hey, we're putting all this money over there for those people, and they just don't know how to behave. What did I say? Y'all just don't know how to behave because we need to monitor your behavior. So therefore, we're involved in the onset of services, and no, you don't get to control them. They determine who gets the award by leveling up the requirements for you to get access to the services. Kind of like what happens on YouTube. I mean, I got this note on YouTube today. It says, "Hello, Darlene Emerson. We just wanted to let you know that our team has reviewed your content." That was my podcast that I put on Facebook earlier today. And as a result, we don't think it's within our community guidelines. American citizenship, responsibility, personal obligation to growth and development for the people who look like you. But if you're using our service, we have decided that we are going to as a result of age restrictions, content. That's the only way they could get me, because I didn't steal somebody else's music or share anybody else's content, and so they can't put a restriction and block it out. You got me? Ain't no blocking. Pimping is real, and pimping is just what it is. As they could not restrict the moment that I'm sharing with you what they did to me. It's almost like, what is freedom of speech? What is freedom of religion? What is the opportunity to invest in your community as a citizen, as we are required to pay taxes, as we all pay taxes? And we are required under law to participate in the process, meaning that you, my friend, have to educate your children, and we provide the services, so you just come. And we don't want to hear what you think about the failed services. No, please don't share with us, because we're not going to change anyway, because we don't have to, because we are the overseers of public finance. Or, hey, we're determining where the dollars go, right? Okay. The committee here, there's an assembly agenda on the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, where they talked about everything under the sun except for the Negro people. So they didn't say, it's as if Negroes don't live in Las Vegas. And it's as if Negroes are just not mentioned in this Commission on School Funding formula and the K-12 considerations. They're not talking about the failed services for your people, no, but they can talk about the taxation systems and how they're built into the foundational principles of net neutrality and administration and stability and integration, equitable, effective tax service that kind of provides services for all. And we have transparency here. Is it really transparent? No, because guess what? When it comes to sharing concerns about failed services and explaining how services actually work and how to ensure that your child's being benefit, marginally, meaningfully, whatever, that they can restrict the video that would provide the service for your child. Because a lot of kids understand that they're failing. What do? They talk to their counselor, they talk to their teacher, and things don't seem to change. They really don't understand that grade level proficiency is relative to each grade level you're promoted to. So if you can't do the work and they're giving you letter grades of F, well, how do you even challenge that? What does that look like in America? Well, it looks like social promotion. And I'm sure as adults who might visit my channel understand what social promotion is and what social, do you know what social emotional learning is? Do you know that that's all black children are really getting today? Because the perception of accountability and the maintenance of effort for people who are overseeing themselves and providing services to you and keeping you out, disallowing your voice to be empowered to change the nation. Understand that the visual concept of what we all witnessed with Stacey Abrams, wonderful Stacey Abrams, went to talk to local people about the maintenance of effort that is required to ensure that citizens become complete and understand how the system actually works. So yeah, she had a whole lot of people, American people, poor people, it didn't matter what color they were. She was emboldening them. She was empowering them. She was informing them of what is expected of an American citizen. As, states are responsible to provide those accesses to ensure that support happen for every community. There was a decision, I guess, with the Dreamers from the Supreme Court. I didn't get a chance to read it, and I'll read it in a minute. I get a little, shared information from people who are engaged in trying to understand just what's going on, just like me. I'm engaged with attempting to understand where is the local voice of reason when it comes to the maintenance of effort for the access and equity provided to all children. So I just need to know, under Child Fine, which is a regulation of the federal government, how the state is providing access to all of those families, because equity and access is all we're talking about. And what does that look like? It looks like if we have special education, under IDEA 2004, the federal government had already realized that states would have a difficult time, so they agreed to pay for some of the services and help support, not fully fund. They said, state, you fully fund the special education services, and we will promise to try to pay you back. But that never happened, but it doesn't really matter, because the local oversight for the federal mandated oversight piece for children with disabilities is the obligation of the state, and I don't care how much service you need. It is not negotiated through, what do they call that? It's not negotiated through a memorandum of understanding, or it's like you can agree to disagree, but when you disagree that a service is not benefiting your child, well, you just have, good morning, Brother Drake. I'm hoping that we really get to understand that the power comes from participating in the current system, meaning that they're making laws that affect us all. As Assembly Bill 57 and Assembly Bill 67, one talks about suspending or expelling a child at 10 years old for life. We know that it's not affecting white children, right? Because they wouldn't even allow those white Caucasian children who were threatening black children here in Las Vegas to serve in the juvenile facility with the black children, because they were afraid, because the black juvenile facility, it might as well be their facility, as they are 80% of the population in there. And I'm sure there are some other people who don't be 80% black, and then tell me that you don't have an obligation to share with me as to the services that you're providing for those children, because you took them from one environment and then you locked them up and corralled them. And what did you do for them? Because in the years that they're locked up, how are they demonstrating that they're going to be self-sustaining? What kind of investment is in there for those children? And quite frankly, it's not, you don't get to just offer an alternative placement without actually demonstrating that what you're doing as a state is working. So no, that's something that's not happening. And because they have so many alternative placements, educational options, and they have so few black people that are having these, but there are few blacks that have the opportunity to work in their community and are trying to bring resources to their people. But the real deal is that, you know, we, the American people, have the obligation to empower our local community. And just because you're black and you're sitting on a committee and you're representing because you got elected, you don't represent the black people. You never have. You represent the people that elected you. And sure, your thoughts and your visions are critical, but you need to open the door so more of our people can share their thoughts and their vision about what's happening to them, how they're being oppressed, how they're not allowed to share concern, because really transparency in public education is all we expect. But when we can't find it, and I'm telling you, it's something you can't find here in Las Vegas, because understand, they want to talk about who's investing in education and who invests the most. Well, they have taken, it's called the takings, because they have taken dollars from, what do you call this, large urban school districts, and created rural schools and rural opportunities for the 17 or 14 children who live in the rural area, who have the same rights as your child, yes. But, you know, when their parents chose to live out there, what opportunity, what is their obligation to help build equitably? Just like they purposely just said that they were going to underfund and have been underfunding urban schools here in Clark County. And the effect has been devastating on the black community, as Early Start is not something that's even talked about. And the maintenance of effort, meaning when children start getting below basic and far, far below basic. And then because children seem to have some kind of crazy kind of behavior, dysfunctions going on when they don't know how to engage in the process, and it continues to kind of like level up every day, and further behind the kids get, because if a child's not at grade level, they can't do the assignments. But if the child has the total responsibility, which American education system seems to believe, the teachers are saying that the children don't do the work, and so that ended their obligation. Well, thank you very much. No, I'm sorry. We don't have that kind of nation. So people who understand how to work with their children can ensure access. But people who believe the system is operating by itself, I'm here to differ. I got to tell you, this stuff doesn't happen by itself, and it's not happening in a box, and it's not happening where we're all not watching. The truth is, we're all watching. Excuse me. And the inability to just share the concern that as a responsible citizen, you have an obligation. And you don't have to be a part of an organization to challenge the failed services. That's not part of citizenship. No, part of living in this democracy and living under this republic means that the engagement of local citizens drive change. And that's just real. The reality is we have failed to basically empower or embolden people who look like us, because that's the obligation of the community. And so, but in our community, we've always been the crabs in the barrel, because they've always given some money to an undeserving organization or people, whatever. It doesn't matter, because they're helping your people, right? They got money over there. Okay. But they're not, they're not miracle workers. They can't do what was in essence the responsibility of the local educational system. So they don't have the monies to assess and determine the levels of support that each one of the children should have in order to engage in the public system. But who has the money and who has the resources like that? Well, of course, it's a local educational system. And if your child is failing, the responsibility of the parent is to understand how that child actually just accesses those resources and why. The district has to explain why that child is not making it before they transition them to an alternative placement. That's a joke. They've created their own harvest, and it looks like us, and dare us to say anything about us. Because if we start getting together, it's impossible, because NAACP doesn't represent the black people. I mean, the organization doesn't even empower or embolden people. So get in your backyard and talk about your experience and the challenges to work with organizations that represent you, but somehow your voice is never heard. The voice of reason says that as an American citizen, we have an obligation to share in the concern of failed services for the people who look like us and our children who are unreasonably being pushed out of the system for the failure to behave correctly. Behavior is it. Willful defiance. What does that look like from someone who has no skills to document you, but yet still can put anything in your permanent cum folder and that follow you for life? What kind of system do we have? Because we understand that guilty doesn't mean guilty. Guilty just means that a group of people got together and they decided that you was guilty and they came to a consensus and then you were deemed guilty. It's kind of like what happened to me today, earlier in my podcast. Please catch it. I put it on YouTube, and the community guidelines said that I violated community guidelines policy. Well, I say that they're violating my freedom of speech because I'm not saying anything that is untrue. But yet and still, they supported people on YouTube who were telling blatant lies. And the president who would state over and over about how much he did for black people. And I have to understand when he called Kaepernick out and told him the sons of bitches, and that's what he said. The sons need to get up and play ball, and they need to understand who they are and what their power was and how it was limited to just playing ball. As an American citizen, you have unlimited power if you choose to will it individually, but you must stand up because failure denotes that you somehow have just failed to represent. You don't even know how to represent because, quite frankly, our children are scored below basic and far, far below basic and below basic and far, far below basic until they are out of the system. And Nipsey said it, hell. He said, you know, he was trying to go to school. He was trying to do the right thing, but at one time or another, he saw that, you know, his family needed him more, and he could bring more to his family by just being out in the street and hustling. But quite frankly, it's the hustle that we need to understand how it works. Some people go to school for 12 years and don't know how to sustain themselves, can't feed themselves. Where's the obligation of the maintenance of effort, and who oversaw the failure is what I really want to know, because I just need to know who's overseeing the failed services as the conversation is happening, believe me. For the failure that's happening here in Clark County for African American people, the conversation is happening. For how you engage in the onset of understanding how those services are happening, well, some people feel it's none of your business, even though it's happening to people who look like you, even though the jeopardy is for the people who are living in your communities and the children who will make choices to do the right or wrong thing because they're hungry. Come on now. Minimum wage is just minimum wage. But when we have so many young white Americans in Clark County, Las Vegas, Nevada, working at the Goodwill, and Goodwill is a not-for-profit organization and gets all kind of discounts and don't have to buy any of their product. It's just donated to them for doing good in our community, right? But then they're also giving young white Americans an opportunity to have a good job and a start, because they have to learn every position, in black Americans too, but black people really don't try to go work in the Goodwill. But there are a few with PhDs, yes, because they know they don't have another option. How could you go to school all your life, sit on the damn credential, and not advocate with the governor as to how come people with credentials are not being employed, and really just not being engaged in the conversation of the level of maintenance that would be required to embolden your community? Because that's America 2021. Where are you? What will you do? And how will you ensure that your people are taken into accountability? I mean, we all pay taxes. Come on now. We live under a taxation system. And when when Nipsey said he made his first meal, I said, wow. And then he had to pay $100,000 in taxes. And then we we celebrate tax system. We all, it's kind of like, oh, can you afford? You got to pay your taxes, girl. Take out money so you don't have to pay your taxes, and then we know people are being punished from the American taxes system. It's a system of how we in America are operating. But you in America, an American, because you're just an American, have an obligation. And if you can't find a committee or organization that represents your views, then represent your views on your own. Call the governor, as the governors are elected to represent everyone. That's my message. I'm coming out here again and just doing this little quick talk. And when I get done, I'm going to upload it to YouTube so I can irritate some people because they feel that my conversation may violate community guidelines. But in representing my people and talking about what's not happening and trying to understand how we are all lumped in the category of willful defiance when it comes to public services for the people who look like us, and how the system has been allowed to document our children as being below basic and far, far below basic, and continue to be promoted without any maintenance of effort. Well, I'm sorry. That is not the America I know. The America I know is not a Democrat or a Republican, or is not the struggle between those two. It is the struggle to understand that we have opened the doors to every ethnic group in America. And when they come here as immigrants, they are able to participate in the onset of services for their people and organize around services for their people, and are able to document, i.e. DACA, trying to make sure that children who were brought here through no fault of their own became educated. We paid for their education. And then now, people are talking about sending them back to their country. What did they provide for that free education that we paid for as African Americans, as we've always been here and still denied the opportunity to oversee the maintenance of effort and outcomes that we all invest in? It's the Pledge of Allegiance, and I said that too. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. This is indoctrination. Unto the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. And you just tell me what happened on January 6th? Can anybody hey, we saw an insurrection, and we saw no punishments going for these people. But when we looked at how public hangings or public executions are still happening, and understand that George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and the continuation of murdered public human people, and the denial of the ability to advocate, stop, please, you're on my neck. And the ignorance of my people that feels that their voices won't be heard. Stop looking for the group that represent. Be the man in the mirror, like Michael said, and understand it's you. So when you see something that happens like a pepper spraying of a 9-year-old child, please share your concern with the people in the state that did it, because they're representing that they can still treat black people inhumanely. And that's unacceptable. But what should be acceptable is that we can change the direction of which way we're going at any time by standing up and ensuring that our voices are heard. You don't have to be a part of a group, but you do have to be a part of the movement. The revolution will not be televised. I just hope that you wake up to participate. Well, until I get in and put this on my YouTube page and understand I'm on Anchor, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitter, I've been doing this for a long time, but to be ignored as if you are so irrelevant. But yet and still, I sit on this soil in Nevada as a citizen, and irrelevancy is something that I just don't comprehend. But if a YouTube channel where I have been and had my podcast for, since before 2008, I don't remember, but I would just go to community meetings and record what I said and then share, sharing, because empowering is sharing, because each one reach one, teach one. But to come on and have a conversation, as we all should be in 2021, after we watched the insurrection at the Capitol and understand that those people had views too, but they didn't include you. And the mere fact that someone would go to the Capitol and represent from your city, your town, your state, and understand that those people are emboldened and organizing and prohibiting resources to reach your community because they have a different belief system, then perhaps it's time for you to acknowledge that those conversations are happening out there. And perhaps you should find a way for the conversations that you're having with your family and your friends and your community people, as you are a tax-paying citizen, to share with the authorities that are ensuring that perhaps services are not happening correctly in your community. And failure has just never been an option in America in 2021. Who will you be? How will you engage in the outcomes and the maintenance of public services? Because we all pay. And I don't care if you pay a penny or a dime. It really doesn't matter. It's all about time. And the time that we have been living in America and waiting for acceptance, understand that power is perceived and acted on. So you see that white people, and maybe one or two blacks, I don't remember, I'm sure that there's some people that was doing some freaky things during that insurgency, because I really saw some freaky things, but a lot of people were recording that day, but everybody who was there had an intent to take over the government. I mean, to seize our government. And we all understand that that's happening in Myanmar right now. The president won overwhelmingly by the people. And the military said, oh no. And they locked her up. But as the world is watching, we can't stand for that. We'll see what actually happens. I'm sure there's been a warning already. But understand that this is 2021, where we have people living on a space station and, up there. And that, they can see into your house by how many warm bodies from the satellite. And that's a tactic of law enforcement before they bust in with those no-knock warrants. But to understand that what Philando Castillo, when they ran his license plate, they knew he was a gun holder. But to come to the car for a tail light that was busted with guns drawn meant the intent was always to oppress and manage. And as an American citizen, I do not need to be managed. I am just expressing myself as my First Amendment right obligates me to and share in concerns over the failure to implement the option of a free and appropriate public education in the county of Clark County, in the 5th largest school district in the nation, where black people have been prohibited basically from sharing in the concern of failed services in their community, and where there is no Moulin Rouge anymore, and there's no Cotton Club, and there's no place for enjoyment or socialization, I would say, for black people to culturally, except for in the historic West Side. They do have organizations that are struggling to still demand a certain level of recognition, but as an American citizen, the obligation to have the ability to organize and critique and share in the concerns of how services are actually being allowed and who gets to provide those services and the maintenance of service. And, how is it that two single moms who just saw a need for parent involvement were able to have an office installed in the district office, and then became the service providers for parent involvement, and then had contracts, and then issued and hired people to work in your community over your people, and then said your people just would not come out. Well, perhaps they don't know how to reach your people. Perhaps that's the issue, because empowerment comes from the people who have a concern. So individually, I need my people to stand up. Individually, I need a wake-up call. Individually, power comes from the inner spirit. Wake up, whatever you're willing to take on the challenge. And life is real. And consequences for inaction is real. And failure has never been an option in America, not in Black America. And so, as my people who are promoted through the system and pushed out into the street, know that Obama did not leave you wailing out there. No, there's obligation to from the state. Go read ESSA. Go read the Every Child Succeed Act and understand that if you didn't graduate at grade level, you have a right to apply for a vocational rehabilitation. So the VR programs that they were supposed to be creating to, when they increase the graduation rate. Somebody wanted to pat on the back, right? They increased the graduation rate because they pushed people out that didn't reach 12th grade level. They just didn't. They didn't even reach 8th grade level. And when they got there, they thought they were not going to make it, so they were able to apply for this certificate of completion. What does that do for you? Today, it don't get you into college. No, because when you come to college, they're going to do an assessment. They're going to determine that you have some remedial catching up to do. And that's just going to take you a long time because you still got to eat. And you still got to have a place and a roof over your head. And guess what? No one is willing to pay for that additional time that you didn't get in the 12th grade. So we need to understand how many kids actually make it over to UNLV, the junior college, and how they're coming. Because then we can talk about the effects of the inaction of the oversight and the maintenance of effort from the public education system. But when they try to hide all this data, they can't hide it because all of the negative things that are happening for the people who look like you are happening because our people are hungry. Our people want opportunity. Our people want to have the same opportunity to live and engage in the champagne life, just like all other people, just like their children. But, okay, wake up. And, Kanye West said, wake up, Mr. West. Hey, it's real. He's been living the champagne life for a long time and understands the power in engaging and understands how he can move people. So did Nipsey. I mean, you just go down the line. So did Marvin Gaye. Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. See, the message has always been there, but were we listening? The deal is that our inability to come in a room and decide how and what we need to target, because it's so vast, because we're in a system and the system is working. But the inability to critique as a group is real because somehow we can't come together. But it's okay, because the individual responsibility as individual says, my brother, my sister, you have an obligation to say, hey, I'm sorry, I need to call the governor because it's not happening for the people who look like me. And I'd just like to know, Governor, where's the conversation and where are we going to be allowed to assume the responsibility to share in the oversight process of the services that are provided to our people across America? Because 2021, if Black Lives Matter, then you show me the conversation about the maintenance of effort and who's getting paid to provide those level of services. And tell me, with the people who have been entitled to work in our communities forever, and they're failing our children, how do we change that? Because, see, people don't want to course correct in the middle of the stream. But you have the opportunity to course correct in the middle of the stream just because of who you are and what you're paying attention to. And my sister, my brother, if your child is enrolled in the public education system and they are not doing well, understand you have a right to have a full educational analysis to determine just what type of supports that would help your child benefit from accessing the American education system, in which they will determine the level of support that should be provided. And then you can manage and measure how well your children are doing. But if you never know what your child needs, it's like going in and just a la carte picking up stuff and it ain't working for you, and pimping ain't easy. But hell, somebody got to do it, right? So apparently my conversation reaches the level of, what did I say that word was? They said that I was breaking the community guidelines. And I'm not exactly sure for who, but for my community, who I've been speaking to, who I've engaged with, and who I am encouraging. Family, follow, like, subscribe, educate yourself, but really understand that your journey is yours alone, not mine. But if your child's not benefiting, that's your responsibility as an individual. And if you've not been able to manage that course correction, meaning the failed services, and your child's always been below grade level, then I'm going to tell you your child's not thriving. And the failure to thrive means that the responsibility is upon the parent. And failure should never be an option if you're an American citizen, as no Americans are expected to fail, especially when we invite immigrants to come here and share in the American dream. Now, the American dream has to do with our real reality of our past. I will never be a slave. And as you can see with your community guidelines, I'm not violating copyright rules, with copyright rules being that won't play that part of the section of the copyright. But this is only me. Nobody owns me. I own me. So therefore, I'm not violating my public right to engage and empower and embolden my people, as we all must wake up. And the decision on right or wrong would come from the reviewer. So you can say you don't like my podcast. You're free to share in your discontent. But I have the freedom and the understanding and the ability to share my concerns, and therefore I will. Failure of the public education system should never be something that's just accepted by any community, as we are all responsible for the security and safety of America. So within that, I'm sharing a real concern as COVID stopped all of the dysfunctional behaviors that were going on. I mean, come on now. Why is it America has so many homeless? We can have poor people without having homeless people. Or we could help provide support to end COVID-19. But until people are ready to ensure that access happens and we stop pretending that we have not harvested the American people, and that perhaps a certain level of people should have access, and there should be a process that should be implemented to ensure that homelessness for families would never happen. And that's kind of like how come we have the Housing Redevelopment Agency. It is there, but the housing policies and the allowance of local control has not provided access to all families. And for whatever reason, once we put people in power, they start thinking about themselves and themselves only, not everyone else. So we have a level of poverty that is just disgusting and painful to see, as we have homeless vets and homeless babies and homeless women and homeless people with disabilities. And those are the people that we're providing services, but somehow the services we provide are just not meeting the standards. How is it that you're still responsible to navigate the process and it hasn't been explained to you, as I've been trying to navigate the process of joining in the conversation of the failed services? Because as I know, we continue to fund public education here and people continue to get paid. But the maintenance of effort for the people who look like you is just totally ignored. And so therefore, I'm bringing attention to it. And no, you may not like it, but that's not my problem. As an American citizen, as an American, we have an obligation to step up. So I'm going to come back out later. I got my little shirt on. Hey, it's all about, this is the new system of finance in America. It's called the marijuana, revolution. But during the marijuana revolution, the people who were only used that option to sustain their family lives, besides selling individual cigarettes, because like Freddie Gray, he was selling that cigarettes one at a time. And white people just felt it was horrible that he would stand out and take away that man's business. What about what has been taken from us, as our people have been denied the resources necessary to become independent? And when we have been independent, people have figured out ways to steal those opportunities, as like locking them up. Like, who is overseeing the system of access? Because once one state went okay with marijuana, all 50 states should have, really, because quite frankly, it's a revenue source and it brings in revenue. But it makes a difference who can make the revenue, right? because that's what life is all about. People establish rules and obligations and regulations to keep certain people out and to allow certain people in. So let's not pretend that we should look at Beau Biden as if he violated the rules, because come on now. I know the Trump children got a whole lot of opportunity, and the Clinton family and the Clinton children are on public national television, and they've probably written books, and people have probably shared in their concept, and life is about engaging. But when you engage and they disagree with your message, they'll just restrict you and say community guidelines violations. But guess what? The most important thing that you need to know is that when you don't do a video, that you record in public, because if no one saw it, they can alter it, and they do. So always live stream, save your video, and then upload it and share your work, because this is work, and I wouldn't consider it work if I didn't understand that it's real, and that I was able as a single woman to raise 3 black men who have never been incarcerated, who understand how to engage in this process of citizenship. Now, they may not vote, and that might be a horrible thing. One of them votes and one of them doesn't. It's my oldest one that has a disbelief in America, as he was gifted in GATE, and somehow, when he would do a work, someone would write on paper, "This isn't really you, is it? Did you really write this?" And then circle it and not grade it? Okay, I'm just telling you that what they do to our children is unnatural. And I had to be there all that time, and still they were able to damage my sons. But my young son, my youngest one, who they said was severely mental retarded, communication handicap, and I tell you this one thing, they did not affect his opportunity to benefit from the public education system, because we had every resource that was available. We had social and emotional learning, we had group therapy, we had this, we had that. And I'm telling you, we had OT, we had everything. He had a one-on-one aid the whole time, not some of the time. And every time they threatened to take the aid away, well, then I said, well, let's have an assessment to determine if he can manage here by himself, because the obligation is, can they independently advocate for themselves in the system, as the system requires that they participate. It's mandated by law, so that's why they have truancy laws. And let's not get mad about the system when we don't understand it, shall we? Because truancy is real. Some people are neglectful, but then for people who are struggling, who don't have a place to sleep, and when the system, when you have outreach workers and you have this and you have all these resources to help manage poverty in your state, in your county, and then those just don't take care of black people. They only take care of people who don't look like you. But we all pay. So how do we ensure that access is happening for the people who look like us? And if you don't see it happening, what did I just say? Call your governor, because your governor has an obligation, and it's not the NAACP, and it's not the Urban League, it's not the Black Chamber, it's not the organizations that figured out how to come together and work to achieve a concept or an ideal. No, because they have not been effective in the last however many years. Perhaps they were effective before, but they're not effective now. What's effective now is engaging in the people that you know and empowering and emboldening them and ensuring that they exercise their right to a free and appropriate service, because we all pay. But if the people who look like you are not managing to benefit from services that we all pay for, then it's responsibility of self to share a concern. So please, just step your game up, level up. You know that song, level, 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 my level, level up. Because are you at my level? Because if you're not, life requires that you just jump in head first and pretend that you are there and act like a citizen. Because a citizen who pays taxes, who has no other obligation but to pay them damn taxes. And everybody knows tax time is here. So what are you paying for? You are paying for services that are implemented through public policy. But if your voice has been drowned out through the on-site, and who benefits from the public policy? Let's just understand that when they killed what's his name? Mike Brown? Whatever. He laid out in the street for all that time. Well, what was happening when they were protesting and hosing down the black people that came out to share a concern and how that all happened? That the city council was busy issuing contracts so that the federal dollars and the state dollars and the county dollars that come to the community, they can control who got that money. Because that's what life's about. Opportunity knocks. And if you're not there to be on the receiving end, well, what should I say? Sounds kind of personal. That's how they feel about us. It's a personal issue. So if it's a personal issue, please pick up your personal responsibility individually and contact your governor. I guess that's why, that's maybe why they restricted mine, because I would have all kind of people calling the governor's office. And yes, because that's where your citizenship comes from, your right to freedom of speech and freedom to exercise the oversight and participate in that maintenance of effort. And all that is because you were just born here in America, and you're an American. But your obligation to evaluate, even if you don't know what you're doing, is real, because we all watched January 6th, the insurgency, and who was there, and who was represented. But no, there were people from Las Vegas, Clark County, officers, no doubt, that participated in the insurgency and took pictures of themselves while they were there, because they were so proud, proud to be a part of that. Just like the KKK never got shut down, and all of the hangings and public murders that Congress just refused to deal with. As citizens, we have a right to demand that public execution stop. As American citizens, we pay taxes. We're paying these people's salaries. And they are oppressing our people. And it's just like what Kaepernick said. You don't want me to get out here and share in entertainment with you people. It's like the gladiators. But then when I turn around, you didn't kill another child that looks just like me. And it's not even like him, because he's mixed white and black. He's mixed. But the obligation is he's just American, just like Kamala Harris. She's a first-generation American, born of 2 immigrant parents, and understands the system, went through the educational system and defended the system of America. And that's what we need to have happen. The system has to be defended, but our right to participate has to be unveiled, meaning that we got to level up, meaning that you can't wait for the organization. Please don't, because they ain't doing it for you. And if they could do it, they would have did it a long time ago. Because some people just get caught up in themselves, and it's just so wonderful to be them. Happy day for you. But what about the 8-year-old that would commit suicide? And what about the 10-year-old that would be expelled from public education? Where's that opportunity? And who would write a law like that? Just tell me. Because those people don't feel you have the right to the same level of access, and they're not going to create those opportunities. They're going to use every opportunity to dissuade you from your real rights. Well, time to take a break. I don't know how long I've been on here. I should be just counting those minutes, but because they don't show me the clock, and they wouldn't show me because they want me to just say, oh, your energy is running out, but it should be running about now. Well, like I said, this little podcast is about Darlene Anderson. We have age-restricted your content. Okay, that's all cool. My people who have a responsibility to educate their people understand what age restriction and the power to do that. Thank you. One day at a time. Here we go. One day at a time.